The city woke slowly, as it always did, under a pale sky that looked worn thin by centuries of prayer and fear. Stone streets held the cold of night long after sunrise, and footsteps echoed as if the city itself were listening. Bells rang from distant towers, not urgently, but with the heavy patience of ritual. Life moved forward, but always carefully, always with restraint. For women, especially, the air felt tighter. Maria walked with her head lowered, her shawl pulled close around her shoulders. She had learned long ago that silence was safer than curiosity. In the marketplace, voices dropped when officials passed. Averted eyes followed them until they disappeared into shadowed archways. No one ever asked where the accused went. Everyone already knew. Maria was not different from other women in the city. She baked bread, cleaned her small home, and prayed aloud when others could hear her. She knew which saints to honor and which words not to say. Her life was ordinary, and that ordinariness was her shield. Or so she believed. The Spanish Inquisition did not arrive with sudden violence. It arrived quietly, with documents and witnesses, with murmured accusations spoken behind closed doors. Its power lay not in chaos, but in order. Everything was written down. Everything was justified. Maria's trouble began with a look. It was nothing she intended. A neighbor's child had fallen ill, and Maria, who knew herbs and teas passed down by her mother, offered help. The child recovered slowly. The family thanked her. Then, weeks later, the child fell ill again. This time, worse. Fear filled the home. Fear always searched for a reason. Someone remembered Maria's herbs. Someone remembered her mother, long dead, who had also known such remedies. Someone whispered a word that carried weight far beyond its sound. Suspicion. The accusation did not come to Maria directly. It never did. It traveled through corridors of authority, gaining strength with every retelling. By the time her name was written on parchment, it no longer belonged to her. When the guards came, they did not shout. They knocked. That was the cruelest part. Maria opened the door expecting a neighbor. Instead, she found men in dark robes, their faces calm, their expressions almost gentle. One of them spoke her name as if reading it aloud for the first time. She did not resist. Resistance implied guilt. Inside the cart that carried her away, Maria noticed how quiet the city became. Windows closed. Doors shut. No one followed. No one asked where she was being taken. Survival depended on distance. The prison was not loud. It smelled of damp stone and old air. Light entered only through narrow openings far above, making time difficult to measure. Maria was placed in a small cell with a wooden bench and nothing else. No explanation was given. Days passed. Or perhaps it was weeks. Food arrived at irregular hours. Silence pressed down on her thoughts. She prayed, but even prayer felt dangerous now. Every word could be twisted, every belief questioned. When the questioning began, it began politely. The inquisitor spoke softly, asking about her childhood, her family, her habits. He listened carefully, nodding, writing. He never raised his voice. He did not need to. His power was absolute, and he knew it. Maria answered honestly. Honesty, she believed, would save her. But the questions shifted slowly, almost imperceptibly. Why did she know herbs? Where had she learned them? Did others seek her help? Did she ever feel anger toward God? Each question was a step closer to a trap she could not see. The Inquisition understood something fundamental about fear. It did not rush. It waited. It allowed the accused to doubt themselves, to replay every memory, searching for the moment they had unknowingly condemned themselves. At night, Maria heard other women crying through the walls. Some cried softly, others screamed until their voices broke. Then there was silence again. No one ever returned. What the Inquisition did to accused women was not designed merely to punish. It was designed to reshape them. To empty them. To make confession feel like relief. Maria still believed the truth would protect her. That belief was already beginning to crack. Silence became Maria's closest companion. It settled beside her on the wooden bench and followed her through every waking moment. At first, she tried to measure time by the rhythm of her breath or the arrival of bread and water, but even those patterns dissolved. The Inquisition did not steal time violently. It let time leak away. The cell changed her senses. Sound carried strangely through stone. A distant scream could feel closer than her own thoughts. Footsteps in the corridor made her heart race, even when they passed without stopping. Each pause outside her door felt like a test she did not know she was taking. Maria began to understand that innocence was not enough. Innocence was quiet, fragile, and easily ignored. When she was brought again before the Inquisitor, his tone was unchanged. He greeted her as if they were continuing a conversation interrupted only briefly. His calm felt deliberate, rehearsed over countless interrogations. He asked if she had remembered anything new. Maria shook her head. Her voice sounded unfamiliar to her own ears when she spoke. Weak. Smaller than it used to be. He smiled gently, as one might smile at a child who had misunderstood a lesson. Memory, he explained, was complicated. Fear could hide the truth even from honest people. The Inquisition existed, he said, to help souls uncover what they had buried. This was the gentle twist of the knife. He did not accuse her directly. He suggested she was mistaken about herself. The questions returned, repeating with slight changes. The same events described again and again until Maria began to wonder if her answers truly matched her memories. Doubt crept in where certainty had once lived. Was it possible she had prayed incorrectly? Had she felt resentment when her life became difficult? Had she envied others? Every human failing was offered as proof of hidden sin. The Inquisition understood women especially well. It knew how society already judged them. A woman who spoke too confidently was suspicious. A woman who knew too much was dangerous. A woman who lived alone was vulnerable. Maria realized that the trial was not about what she had done. It was about who she was allowed to be. Other women were brought into the questioning room from time to time. Maria recognized none of them, but she saw the same hollow look in their eyes. Some confessed quickly. Others resisted until their resistance collapsed inward, turning into despair. Confession, she learned, was not an admission of guilt. It was a performance of submission. Those who confessed were praised. They were told their honesty pleased God. Those who did not were told they endangered their souls. The pressure did not come only from words. One day, Maria was taken down a corridor she had never walked before. The air grew colder. The stone walls seemed closer together, as if narrowing deliberately. She was shown instruments she did not understand fully, but she did not need to. The message was clear. Pain was possible. No one threatened her directly. They did not have to. Fear filled the spaces where threats might have been spoken. The Inquisitor told her that suffering purified the soul. That pain revealed truth when lies could not survive it. He spoke with conviction, as if he truly believed this mercy he described. Maria returned to her cell shaking. That night, she dreamed of her mother. Not as she remembered her, but as the city remembered her. Whispered about. Reduced to rumor. Maria woke with tears on her face and no memory of when they had begun. Days later, she was questioned again. This time, she hesitated before answering. The Inquisitor noticed. Hesitation, he explained, suggested hidden knowledge. He encouraged her to speak freely, reminding her that confession could bring comfort. Maria felt something inside her begin to bend. The human mind, when isolated long enough, seeks escape. Confession began to appear less like betrayal and more like rest. She wondered if the other women who had confessed felt relief afterward. She wondered if they were still alive. The Inquisition allowed her to wonder. That was its brilliance. By the time Maria was returned to her cell, she no longer trusted her own thoughts. The truth felt distant, obscured by fear and repetition. Even her prayers felt monitored, as if God himself were listening for mistakes. The silence grew heavier. In the corridor, someone screamed again. This time, Maria did not cover her ears. She listened. The sound anchored her to reality, reminding her she was not alone in her suffering. But isolation remained complete. Women accused by the Inquisition were cut off not just from society, but from identity. They were stripped of roles, names, histories. All that remained was the accusation. Maria began to understand that survival did not depend on innocence, but on adaptation. And adaptation required surrender. Maria's body adjusted to the prison before her spirit did. Hunger dulled into a constant ache rather than sharp pain. Cold became an expected presence, like a second skin. What refused to settle was the waiting. Waiting hollowed her from the inside, leaving room for fear to echo. When she was summoned again, she noticed she no longer trembled as violently as before. That frightened her more than the trembling ever had. The questioning room was unchanged. The same table. The same chair. The same quiet authority pressing down from the stone walls. The Inquisitor greeted her with familiarity, as though she were a regular visitor rather than a prisoner. He asked if she had slept. Maria nodded. He asked if she had prayed. She hesitated, then nodded again. The hesitation did not go unnoticed. He spoke of confession as if it were a bridge. On one side, pain and uncertainty. On the other, peace. He described it carefully, patiently, never forcing the image. He allowed her to build it herself. Maria realized then that the Inquisition did not need her to lie. It needed her to agree. The questions changed again, becoming more specific. Had she ever spoken words she did not understand? Had she ever felt a presence during her prayers? Had she ever believed she was chosen for something greater? Each question invited imagination. Each answer created a new possibility of guilt. When Maria denied these things, the Inquisitor did not argue. He simply wrote. Silence followed. Silence was worse than accusation. It suggested disappointment. Eventually, he closed the book and looked at her with something that almost resembled concern. He told her that many women struggled at this stage. That fear often hid the truth. That assistance could be provided if memory failed. She understood what he meant. She was taken again down the colder corridor. This time, she was not shown the instruments. She was only made aware of their presence. The space smelled of iron and damp stone. The air felt heavier, as if it carried the weight of past suffering. Nothing happened to her that day. That was the lesson. The threat lingered, growing sharper in her mind with each passing hour. Her thoughts began to circle endlessly, searching for something, anything, that might satisfy her questioners and bring the waiting to an end. Back in her cell, Maria whispered memories aloud, testing them. She spoke of herbs, of her mother, of prayers said quietly at night. Each word sounded dangerous when spoken in that place. She began to edit herself, removing anything that might be misunderstood. Then she began to wonder if the editing itself was proof of guilt. Other women passed through the corridor. Some returned to their cells broken and silent. Others never returned at all. One woman, older than Maria, was placed briefly in the neighboring cell. Through the wall, Maria heard her praying constantly, her voice hoarse but determined. Then one night, the prayers stopped. In their place came a soft, steady sound of weeping that lasted until morning. The next day, the cell was empty. Maria felt the walls closing in on her thoughts. She began to understand how confession took shape. It was not sudden. It was sculpted slowly, carved out of exhaustion and fear. When she was questioned again, she changed her approach. She spoke less. She listened more. She mirrored the Inquisitor's language, repeating his phrases back to him. He seemed pleased. Encouraged, even. He asked if she believed the Inquisition existed to protect souls. Maria said yes. The word felt heavy in her mouth, but it also felt safe. He asked if she believed that hidden sin endangered not only the sinner, but the entire community. She said yes again. Each agreement brought a small release of tension, like loosening a tightly bound rope. She could feel herself slipping into a role that promised survival. Then came the question she had been waiting for and fearing all at once. Did she believe it was possible she had unknowingly served darkness? Maria closed her eyes. In that moment, truth felt less important than relief. She thought of the endless waiting, the cold, the screams. She thought of the other women who had confessed and wondered if they slept without fear now. When she opened her eyes, she said that it was possible. The Inquisitor nodded, not triumphantly, but solemnly, as though this admission carried great weight. He told her that acknowledging possibility was the first step toward healing. That night, Maria felt strangely calm. The fear did not disappear, but it softened. For the first time, she believed the ordeal might end. She was wrong about how it would end. Confession required detail. The next sessions focused on shaping her admission. She was guided gently, corrected when necessary. When her story did not align with expectations, she was reminded of the instruments waiting below. Pain was still mostly implied, but its shadow darkened every word. Maria learned to speak carefully, to describe experiences she had never had as though they were half-remembered dreams. She learned which phrases satisfied her listeners and which raised further suspicion. The confession no longer felt like hers. It belonged to the Inquisition. Women accused by the Spanish Inquisition were not destroyed all at once. They were dismantled. Piece by piece. Belief by belief. Until what remained could be reshaped into obedience. By the time Maria signed her confession, her hands barely shook. She felt empty. The day of judgment arrived without ceremony. No bells rang for Maria. No crowd gathered in her name. The Inquisition did not need spectacle to complete its work. The trial had already happened in the shadows, word by word, doubt by doubt. Maria was brought into a larger chamber than she had seen before. Light entered through high windows, pale and distant. The room smelled of wax and old stone. Others were present, officials, clerks, men whose faces showed neither cruelty nor kindness. They were witnesses to a process they believed was righteous. Her confession lay on the table. Seeing it written startled her. The words looked permanent, heavier than memory. This version of her life was neat and complete in a way reality never had been. It told a story of ignorance turned to danger, of weakness corrected by authority. She barely recognized herself in it. The Inquisitor read portions aloud. His voice was steady, careful to emphasize humility and repentance. Maria stood silently, hands folded, eyes lowered. She knew now that silence was expected. Her role had changed. She was no longer questioned. She was displayed. The judgment was measured. Merciful, they called it. Maria would live. That fact alone felt like generosity. Her punishment was described as correction rather than cruelty. Public penance. Years of restriction. A warning made visible to others. The language was clean and controlled, stripped of emotion. It spoke of salvation, not suffering. No one mentioned the months she had spent breaking apart. When she was let out, she felt lighter and heavier at the same time. Lighter because the waiting was over. Heavier because she carried a new identity she could never remove. The city looked different when she returned to it. People saw her before she saw them. Some stared openly. Others turned away quickly, as if guilt might spread through contact. Her name traveled faster than she could. It was no longer just Maria. It was Maria, the accused. Her home felt smaller. The walls pressed in. Silence followed her again, but this time it came from the outside. Neighbors avoided her door. Friends from her old life disappeared quietly. She had survived the Inquisition, but survival came with conditions. At night, she dreamed of the cell. Of questions without answers. Of words that no longer belonged to her. She woke often, heart racing, unsure where she was. What the Spanish Inquisition had done to accused women did not end with judgment. It followed them into the rest of their lives. Maria tried to pray as she once had, but prayer felt different now. It felt watched. Each word seemed dangerous again, as if the Inquisition still listened from the shadows. God felt distant, filtered through fear. Slowly, she learned new habits. She spoke less. She offered no advice. She avoided attention. She made herself small because smallness had become safety. Yet something remained inside her that the Inquisition had failed to erase. Memory. Not the memory written on parchment, but the quiet truth she carried alone. She remembered who she had been before suspicion shaped her. She remembered kindness without fear. She remembered that knowledge did not always mean sin. These memories did not bring comfort at first. They brought grief. But over time, grief softened into something steadier. Understanding. Maria began to notice other women like herself. Women who moved carefully through the world. Women whose eyes carried depth born of endurance. They did not speak openly, but they recognized one another. In small ways, they resisted. A shared look. A quiet act of help. A moment of humanity offered where cruelty had once ruled. The Inquisition sought to break women by isolating them, by convincing them they were alone in their guilt. But the truth was quieter and stronger. Women endured. They adapted. They remembered. Maria never spoke publicly about what had been done to her. The cost was too high. But in her private thoughts, she named it for what it was. Control. Fear. Power disguised as salvation. Her life was not restored to what it had been. Some things, once broken, remained changed forever. But she lived with awareness now, and that awareness became its own form of freedom. The Spanish Inquisition faded eventually, as all institutions do. Stone walls crumbled. Records gathered dust. But the lives it touched carried its marks long after. Maria grew older. Her hair turned gray. The city changed around her. New generations walked the streets unaware of how close fear once lived. She watched them with quiet hope. What the Inquisition could not fully destroy was the human capacity to endure, to remember, and to find meaning beyond suffering. That was the truth no confession could erase. And it was the truth Maria carried to the end of her days.